Hello, and welcome to Canada Reads American Style. I'm Shauna.
And I'm Rebecca. And can you believe it? It is the end of December 2020. I read some things the other day about what I thought my year was going to be like this year. And let's face it, no one could have predicted what was going to happen to this year. The one saving grace, I think that Sean and I can agree uh, that we that was a good thing was that we read some amazing books. So we want to rank the top 5 books that we each read in 2020. And there were you could pick whatever you wanted. It could be an American author, it could be, a British author, it could be a Canadian author, it could be anybody. But your top 5 that you read in 2020. And we're going to start with our number 5, working our way up to our number 1 best book that we read this year. Now, I want to have a slight disclaimer, and Shauna may want to do the same thing, which is to say, we read a lot of great books, and I couldn't put them all on the list. So I had to pick 5. So it's kind of like, picking your favorite dog, picking your favorite kid, whatever. It's impossible because you love them all the same. So if my certain books didn't make my list, don't be shocked, but these are my top 5, as I'm sure, Shauna, you feel the same way, correct? That you read a lot of great books that aren't going to make your list, right?
Oh, yeah. And, the reason why we have this podcast is so we can talk about all the books that we like. So go ahead and take a listen whenever you want to.
Yeah, because we talked about a lot of great books this year and interviewed a lot of amazing people. But let's start with our top 5 books, number 5 on the list, which is we're working our way up to number 1. So, Shauna, what is your number 5 book on your list for 2020?
My number 5 book is Radicalized by Cory Doctorow. It really opened my eyes to several different scenarios of how we could be living in different worlds and just different situations. My favorite story in that entire book was about a woman being in the technology industry. And as someone who's passionate about technology, that really meant a lot to me. And also the fact that I was championing it for the 2020 Canada Reads competition definitely makes it the 5th book on my list this year.
That's a great choice. I love that book. Well, my number 5 is kind of funny because I just read it, and it's called Migrations, and it's written by Charlotte McConaughey, and she's actually Australian. And the book mom, one of our friends, Larissa, she recommended it on her Instagram page, and I read it in 2 days, which is unheard of for me, and I loved it. And the reason I loved it so much, I won't go into it in great detail at this point, but the reason I loved it so much is that it was a book that made me cry sad tears and happy tears. And I don't remember a book making me do that. So it made my number 5 slot for 2020. Shauna, how about your number 4?
My number 4 book is I Think I Love You by Lauren Lane. And this book is a best friends fall in love. And my most favorite book in the entire world is the historical romance version of this. So this year I tried to read a lot more contemporary based novels, and this one really caught my eye. And the aspect of the best friends of men and women, they always say that you can't be best friends, and this book goes ahead and proves that they do become lovers. So, and what's wrong with falling in love with your best friend?
My number 4 is Fall from Grace by Wayne Arthurson. And this was part of it was the first book of the Leo DeRoche series. And the reason I love this book so much is probably as much as Shauna loves that romance where it's best friends fall in love. What I love more than anything, I love flawed characters who don't apologize and maybe don't even change, that they are just who they are, because we encounter flawed people, or we may be flawed people. And there's nothing more amazing than a flawed person telling their story. So I absolutely fell in love with Leo. I read three. In fact, I read the three books in the series. Unfortunately, there won't be a fourth, but I read the three books in the series, and I'm not somebody to read series books either. But I loved Leo so much, I read all three. But Fall from Grace was the first one in the series. I loved it. It was my number 4. So, Shauna, your number 3.
So I'm going to cheat here a little bit, and I'm going to say I have two books in my number 3 spot. One is From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle, and I love that book because it is just such a heartwarming novel, and the struggle is real, and it really shows how you can rise above it all. And my other book that I really loved this year was Little Brother by Cory Doctorow, and it really captures the internet security protocols of the world and what we can learn to keep ourselves safe, especially in the evolution of technology for the future.
Okay. My number 3 is Seven Fallen Feathers by Tanya Talaga. And it's interesting because I went to Canada. I was in Toronto a year ago, well, more than a year ago now. And I mean, I go a lot, but I was there this one time and I'd gone into Indigo Books and I saw Seven Fallen Feathers on the shelf. And so I thought, oh, this looks really good. And I bought it and I brought it back and I didn't read it right away. So, because you know how we are with our to be read list, it just was one that was around for a while. And I finally thought, oh my gosh, I want to read this. And it really is the thing that got me reading a lot more Indigenous authors, Canadian Indigenous authors. And it's a story about the 7 young people from Thunder Bay, Ontario, and it's nonfiction, who died died in Thunder Bay from the same high school. And it's just an incredible story. And I don't know that anybody writes better nonfiction than Tanya does. And so that is my number 3 title. So, Shauna, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is The Red Chesterfield by Wayne Arthurson. And the reason why I chose this cute little novella, the quirky, eccentric novella by Wayne Arthurson, is I believe this book and this author taught me the greatest of lessons this year. And that lesson was that readers are not dumb. And I'm finding myself reading books where the authors are explaining everything to the nth degree and not allowing me to use my imagination or my creativity to fill in the blanks to figure out the solution to the problem or however the book's supposed to read. And so in speaking and reading Wayne Arthurson's The Red Chesterfield really boggled my mind when he expressed that to us in his interview this year.
Okay, my number 2 is From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle. And this was a really hard decision to make, but I'll explain why it was number 2, because I actually thought it would be number 1, but it was my number 2. But this is a brilliant read. And it's been proven by the fact that it has been number 1 nonfiction bestseller list throughout Canada forever. And we know that it probably will be on the bestseller list in the United States too, since they're going to be publishing it in, I think Lucy said, in 2022 on her Instagram page, so, or her account. And that's really, really exciting news because I think this is a story for everyone. Jesse's story about homelessness, addiction, losing his culture. I mean, so many people, unfortunately, in both Canada and in the United States have that experience. And if you don't have that experience, so many of us need to learn what that's about. And Jesse tells it so poetically that it's why everyone loves that book so much. It is 100% the book that should have won Canada Reads. I'll never, ever understand why it didn't. But that's okay because, you know, I think being on the bestseller list for a freaking year long or however long it's been, I think that's a pretty great way to cap 2020 for Lucy and Jesse. So From the Ashes is my number 2. So I don't have the drum roll sound, Shauna, but what is your number 1 for 2020?
All right. This book, I thought a really hard, long time about what would be the number 1 book on my list. And I just couldn't get away from my favorite genre. And I loved this story. I talked about this book with a lot of people, even though it's not of their genre. I remember talking to Rebecca about it on our walks at lunch. And what really drove this book was that the author it's a spy espionage historical romance, and the female character and the male character, there's this mysterious relationship between the two of them, and you are trying to figure out how and why. And the author does just such a great job with making these characters witty and charming, and you get so connected to them. So, The Sweetest Little Sin by Christine Wells was my favorite book of 2020.
Wow. Interesting. Well, you've already listed my number one is The Red Chesterfield by Wayne Arthurson. And the reason I love this book the most this year is because it engendered the most discussion of any book I've chatted with two other people. And having that opportunity, we interviewed Wayne once, and then we also had him for YouTube Live or Instagram Live. I'm not sure what we did, but anyway, whatever it was, we did a live with him and got to ask him all kinds of questions. And this book, so many people, everyone who reads it will come away with something different from that story. And what I love, it's like you said, Wayne leaves it up to us to make a decision about what the story is. It's hilariously funny, but only because it's not it's not a comedy or anything like that. It's not meant to be a funny book, but it's so funny in its brilliance because you read it and you just know. You read it once and you go, yep, I think I understand it. You read it again and then you talk to other people and you get their opinions. And then you read it a third time and your mind gets blown. So if you do nothing else from our podcast ever, you have to read The Red Chesterfield. It's the highest recommendation I can give a book. It was absolutely my favorite this year. It's 97 pages. It'll take you a couple of hours. You read it, but read it again and again and again. And I promise you'll get a lot out of it. So, all right. Well, that is our 2020.
Yay!
We are looking forward. Yeah, we are looking forward to 21 because Canada Reads has announced a date for next year. So we're excited to kind of run through it all again. And we hope that the first half of the year, things start to get better and that Rebecca, myself can get across the damn border and see Canada again because I miss all of you. I miss everything I used to do in Canada, and I can't wait for that freaking border to reopen and have a great 21.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to holding our defending championship discussions again after the Canada Reads competition. So keep looking forward to content from us here at Canada Reads American Style.
Bye.